Hello and welcome to ImpactoAZ, a podcast dedicated to centering the Latinx voice on important issues of the day. I'm Jonathan Higuera, your host, here along with my co-host Juan Rodriguez,
Hello.
and we have a very important guest with us today that we're really looking forward to a good discussion on all the issues going on in Texas right now, particularly when it comes to redistricting and the congressional maps. So welcome, John Lira. Thank you for being on our show.
Well, John and Juan, it's an absolute pleasure to talk with you and to talk a little bit to the people who are the audience and the fan base of ImpactoAZ. So an honor to be here, sir. Thank you.
Yes, and we like our audience. We hope they're from all over the country, but right now we're growing that base, and a lot of us have been very interested in the things going on in Texas right now, and who wouldn't be, right? You're making national news with some of these moves. But first, maybe you are a candidate. Tell us a little bit about your candidacy, why you're running for Congress, and a little bit about your district.
Fantastic. Would love the opportunity to. So, John Lira, I was a Mexican, fourth generation Mexican American born in Southeast San Antonio. The smartest thing I did as a young adult was to raise my hand at the age of 17 and to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. That is what really planted the seed of service. You know, unbeknownst to me at the time, that led to me being involved in the invasion of Iraq in 2003 at the launch of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I went back as a Marine reservist. Actually, here's my connection to Arizona. Senator Ruben Gallegos and I served in the same Marine battalion out in
Right?
2005. Yeah, Lucky Lima,
Wow. Yes.
325 Marines. I like to say this, but I outranked him at the time when we
Is that
deployed.
right?
But one of my
wrote
biggest
a book
fans.
on that too, right? Didn't he write a book
He
on
absolutely
that?
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been a great friend to me, a great supporter of mine, and I wish him the best of luck as he's fighting in the Senate now. But from the Marines, you know, my job at first was a satellite communications operator and then an intelligence analyst in the reserves. And I wanted to build on that to not only serve military, leaders, but also policy leaders, people who are making the important decisions here domestically in our government. So I used my GI Bill to transition from an intelligence analyst into a policy analyst. I got degrees in political science from UTSA, my master's at Carnegie Mellon. I went to Washington, D.C. to get my first big boy government job at AmeriCorps at the time. But then I transitioned to the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of Veterans Business Development, so helping to empower veterans to become entrepreneurs after they left military service. Went on to this very cool commission in government called the National Commission on Military National Public Service, and was created by Senator John McCain before he passed. But the whole goal of it was how can we build pathways to more people serving in military national public service and all the benefits that one gets out of service to their community, to their country. Really fascinating. We launched a great report on March 2020, about the same time that COVID was launched on the entire population of the world. And of course, it pushed our report to the back burner. But there was one congressman who took it and introduced it in Congress, and that was Congressman Jimmy Panetta out of California. So after writing that report, I went to go work in his office to try to pass the bills that we had, the recommendations that we had included in that report. But from there, I was inspired. I was already building a career and wanting to serve at the front line. So in 2021, launched my campaign for U.S. Congress in Texas's 23rd congressional district at the time, which is the ginormous one, the one that it's bigger than the state of Pennsylvania.
Is that the one that encompasses San Antonio, or where was that one?
It stretches from San Antonio all the way out to El Paso. So a third of the state of Texas. It's bigger than the state of Pennsylvania. But this was a district that, of course, had the horrible Uvalde tragedy right in the middle of that race. So we fought hard. We learned a lot. After that race, when we were just came up a little bit short, went to go serve at the Biden-Harris administration at AmeriCorps again, in my old capacity as a senior advisor for veteran and military family initiatives. So.
Okay, well, that's a varied background. Wow, you really have done a little bit of everything, a lot of military. And that, I imagine, puts you in a good position to run for this seat. Tell us, by comparison, the 35th district, how does that compare with the one you ran for before? Is it as sprawling as that one was?
No, definitely not. The last one consisted of 29 counties, again, stretching from San Antonio to El Paso. So very sparse, but very huge counties that didn't have a large population. This one is condensed into 3.5 counties, or 4 counties, and it's anchored in southeast San Antonio. So it has some of the cities like Seguin, also Floresville, right outside of San Antonio, heading towards Austin, but it stops short of Austin this time. The current district runs from Austin to San Antonio.
Okay.
But this essentially is the area that I grew up in. You know, it has my school district, the military recruitment office that I was recruited office, the church that I went to. You know, so
Oh.
this is very much what they drew out of.
Mhm.
They drew me out of my 23 race when they redistricted. So what they drew out of, they drew back in to
Okay.
Texas 35. So
Okay. So
we
that
like our
must,
chances here. We love this district.
I was going to say that must give you a lot of confidence as you're going around the district, some of your old stomping grounds. Yet, I did read where some of the pundits, the Cook Political Report, Crystal Ball that Larry Sabato puts out, says this is a likely Republican district. Um, how do you feel about that? I mean, do you feel like you can take that likely and make it a Democrat seat, or what gives you hope that you can do that?
No, I think that was determined way back when, you know, I think when they were trying to capitalize, and they just saw a huge increase of Latino support for Trump coming right off the, you know, these maps were redistricted based off of trying to capitalize on Latino support for Trump. There's been poll after poll to say that support has melted away like a
Mm,
raspa in summer down here. It has
is
faded
that
away.
right?
So that's an
Buyer's
opportunity.
remorse, huh? It's kicking in.
But the Cook Political Report also updated their PVI score. So it's now an R+4, which it used to be an R+10
Hmm.
before when we first started this race. But I think they're seeing trends in Virginia. They're seeing trends in New Jersey, Tennessee last week, where it was a 13-point swing. We're looking at a 4-point swing here. If we get anything close to 13 in Tennessee come next year, the Democrat defends this seat and we make their gerrymandering plans backfire. And what's unique about this one, it is the district with the the smallest Republican leverage in it, and it's an open seat, so there is no power of an incumbent in there. So we
Hmm.
like our chances here. This is a majority minority district. It's 58% alone Hispanic. There's more registered Democrats in the district than there are registered Republicans. They're
Oh,
just in some of
really?
our lower turnout precincts, so we're going to have to energize them and get them out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out because I did not see those swing numbers or some of the things you pointed out. I just saw that they were saying it's a likely Republican, but that gives must give your team a lot more hope that you have a good chance of bringing that seat home. Of course, you have to get through the primary first, and it looks like you might be the front runner there based on the amount of money raised at this point, right? I mean, from what I've seen. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I think we are kind of strongly in front runner status. This district overlaps with about 10% of Texas 23rd that I ran in last time. But here in San Antonio, we have the name recognition. We have a base of donors and base of endorsers from last time who came in to endorse. So we're re-engaging that as well. And, you know, we were one of the first ones to sign in to file for this race. You know, so I think we like our chances here. You know, this is a definitely some of the most highest performing Democratic precincts surround my home. And I'll tell you this, I wouldn't be in this race had not for this is the third congressional district that my home and my community have been drawn into in the last 5 years. So that adds a huge educational component to this race where we have to go and explain why who they thought they were voting for from last election and how it's changed this time around. So it has added a little bit of voter education to our outreach. But that's the things you have to do when you want to win and you want to turn out voters out here.
Right. And from the Republican field that I've seen for their primary, I noticed most of them were Latinos as well. Um, so the argument that we're losing a voice might be countered by the Republicans by saying, not really, we're still going to have a Latino in that seat. How do you respond to people who might say something like that?
Yeah, well, there's an argument to be made, but I tell you what, I think that Latinos who voted for Trump are still the smaller majority of this district, and you know, I think that there's a lot more of the white conservatives, the white Republicans in this district, and some of the more rural counties. So it'll be interesting to see if they consolidate. You know, some of the rural districts consolidate under the Latino Republican candidate. And I will tell you about this. I think there are up to 8 Republicans in that race right now. And they're really fighting to go to a runoff. In our race, right now we're a party of two who's filed. We're waiting to see if anyone jumps in. Today is the filing deadline. But we still have an opportunity on the Democratic side to win this one out 51% without a runoff. And if we do that, we can build the arsenal. We can start the outreach early while the Republicans continue to tear themselves up and honestly push each other farther to the right, which would make them potentially, seem unreasonable when it
Mhm.
finally gets to the general election.
Okay, so they might be more vulnerable if they beat each other up in a bruising primary, huh? Um, Interesting. And I did notice some of your campaign literature and some of the statements you put out. You were it sounds like you were very much against this redrawing, very much against this mid decade redrawing that the GOP did on this. And it sounded like you thought it was unfair. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. At the same time, it opened up maybe a seat you were running for. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about that maneuver that was done to do a mid-decade redraw of these political maps.
But I'll also tell you, I thought that the 2020 census redistricting was also gerrymandered and racially gerrymandered as well. But yeah, absolutely right. There was only one person that wanted this to happen in Texas, and that was Donald Trump. He reached out and specifically asked, and of course, Greg Abbott capitulated to that and went ahead and did it. This doesn't benefit any Texans. This is a way to avoid responsibility. This is a way to actually decrease the political power of Black and brown Texans here. Imagine that. These are Black and brown families that have helped build the state. They pay taxes in this state. And now they're saying that their political power is reduced. Some of the communities that have spent generations, some of the Hispanic communities, some of the Black communities here have spent generations trying to be heard and build up their political power just to have it cracked by the latest round of redistricting. So I wasn't a fan. I was hoping that the Supreme Court would step up and do the right thing, but we're smart enough than that. Especially here in Texas, not to depend on the lower courts or the Supreme Courts. And I admit this, the lower courts are starting to push back against the administration a bit. The Supreme Court has not proven that they're willing to do that quite yet. So we want it to be Texas's insurance plan that they decided to go forward with these gerrymandered maps, that they're going to have a strong candidate in this race to step up, to fight for it, and to defend it, and to fight and to win it.
And I'm no expert on voting rights, but I did see that lower court from Texas did say no, you should go with the original maps, and there was even a Reagan appointee, I believe, on there who led that, who also agreed with that that no, we shouldn't redraw these maps. So it took going to the Supreme Court to stay the original order to redraw it. So I guess your point is well made that some of the lower courts are starting to push back, even in Texas.
When I say racial gerrymandering, those aren't my words. Those are the findings of the lower court, the three-judge panel's report. So yeah, absolutely right. I think they made their case fairly. Organizations like LULAC fought hard, and it just proves that they're willing to kick their can down the road. And that's exactly what it means, is we're going to keep these gerrymandered maps in place, even though they've been found to be racially racist. And there could be a point where we win this race, and then 2 months later they say, "Oh, well, guess what? They are racially gerrymandered. We're going to go back to the old map." So you're instantly running in a new race. So they just opened up a can of even more confusion for the people of Texas.
They
So I
did,
didn't appreciate any of it, but
and
we're
they
ready to
were,
fight against it.
and I did see that they were also the Republicans were their move was initiated by a letter from the Department of Justice that looked at some of these maps and said, "Oh, there's no pure coalition. There's no majority, black or brown or whatever. There's maybe 40% Hispanic, 30% black, 10% white, whatever the case may be." And that was the grounds that they asked them to look at those maps and redraw them, because they said with no clear majority, they had to have been gerrymandered. So you have to do something about this. Just shaky legal basis from the get go on that. And the Republicans agreed, apparently.
They subverted the spirit of that law. Absolutely. 100%. They manipulated that and used it to their advantage, and sometimes I feel like, again, I think if they've been planning to do such things for so long, that they were just waiting for the opportunity to kind of let some of these gerrymandered, some of these plays, like if they're calling plays, to play out. And this is exactly what they did in this case. And what did it do? It sparked, a redistricting war, right? Because California had to respond. Well, then,
Right.
then Wisconsin had to respond, and then another state had to respond, and I think we're still in it right now.
That's
This
right.
Supreme Court decision could have brought clarity, but all it did was hold it in place until they make a decision as
Right. Part
not
of their
this election,
shadow
probably.
docket, right? Their shadow docket, which Ron and I heard a lot about the shadow docket from another co-host of this show who was a guest who explained how that is happening at the Supreme Court level and really issuing decisions without really explaining or but that may be for another day. But
Listen, if the Republicans had policy to stand on, results to show, they wouldn't have to gerrymander these seats because good Republican candidates would be able to come in here, point to those things, and say, vote for us and win the vote. They were trying to avoid accountability in these things. They're trying to give not only avoid accountability, but give an edge that was not there, an advantage that should not be there. So Texans are smart when they know when the goalpost has been moved during the middle of the game on
with that, saying that, you said if Republicans were good, they'd be able to come in and explain their policy. What are going to be, how are you going to explain to the voters, the would-be voters in this district now to vote for you? What are going to be your priorities? And where do you stand on some of these policies that you think will catch their attention and convince them to vote for you?
We're campaigning on the same things that got Donald Trump elected to office, that got Mayor Mondami elected to office recently, bringing down the prices of inflation that have been lingering since the COVID-19 pandemic. We had big promises in here. Day one, groceries were going to fall. And worse than that, they didn't fall. They got tariffs put on them. Day one, we were supposed to see all these massive, tips were not going to be taxed anymore. That doesn't kick in until later. We'll see. But there's a lot of things that were promised. The American dollar and what that dollar could buy you just a year ago is less than what it can buy you now. And we're trying to restore that. We want the insulins that were capped at $35, that got scrapped. Let's bring it back. The housing supply of affordable housing, the young adults cannot buy houses anymore. It's more expensive to start and raise a family. So these are the things that the people are demanding still. These are the things that Democrats have always been paramount to Democratic policy. And these are the things that we want to continue to fight for. We may have gotten hijacked and fooled. Donald Trump may have fooled people thinking that he may be the president of the working man. He's the president of billionaires. With the billionaires' tax breaks, the only people that are getting rich and thriving in the American first economy are Trump and his billionaires, his family and his billionaire friends.
Now, I've always had the impression that Texas, one of the things it had going for it, among many things, but one of the things was that it was an affordable place to live. I had friends who moved from Arizona there. They cited, they liked that they were able to buy a house for Arizona. Housing prices have gone up terribly in the last couple of years, last few years. Is that still the case in Texas, or have they suffered that same rise in affordability of housing?
They absolutely have experienced that same rise. San Antonio specifically used to be one of the lowest cost of points of living cities in all of America. And, we're starting to see, again, people not able to afford even to rent housing anymore. So I think that we have to increase the supply of affordable housing. I like to see housing at the $100,000 level to $125,000 level. Give seniors a chance to buy. Give young working families a chance to buy. It doesn't have to have an acre or half an acre on it, but give them a home to build on their first home. I would like to see incentives for first-time home buyers. But things are here. We don't have a state tax here in Texas, and that might be fooling people to think that it might be an all-around better place and cheaper, less expensive because we don't have that tax. But we do pull our taxes out of different things here. Like consumption and like our property taxes. So you might not be paying a tax on your income in here in Texas, but the state of Texas is finding other ways and other areas to tax our people. So we are experiencing the same. Texas is one of the biggest energy producing states in the country, in the world. And we still have some of the highest energy prices. That production has not benefited the average Texan one bit. We're still at risk every summer of losing our grid, or every winter losing our grid because we haven't connected to the national power supply. So there's still some issues that Texans we need to work on here to make sure that people in emergency situations, like early warning systems like we saw happen in Kerrville this summer, that some of the basic things, changing out gas pipes that those counties don't have money to do. Some of those basic needs are still here in Texas. So I love the state of Texas. I don't want to trash it. I want to improve it. I do want more families to come and live in Texas and to help us thrive.
Okay, this might be a good point, Juan, where we can bring you into the conversation. And I want to let our viewers know that Juan, my co-host on this show, is also the communications director for Mr. Lira's campaign. So in the interest of transparency, we're going to let you know about that. But thank you for helping to arrange this podcast with Mr. Lira, Juan. And is there anything that you're thinking that you might want to bring into this conversation?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I mentioned it to you, and I think I brought it up in our meeting this morning, John. That
Which John are you talking to? There's two Johns here now.
John Lira.
Okay.
In a way, I'm glad that the Supreme Court ruled last week. It seemed like we were talking about the same subject over and over, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity now. The campaign has an opportunity. You have an opportunity to go off and start talking about meat and potato issues, economic issues. So I'm excited for that, and listening to you, I think it's been a while since you've had an opportunity to talk about these issues. You were talking about affordability and inflation. So, where policy-wise, where do you want to take your discussion forward with this campaign?
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. You're absolutely right. One of my most moving experiences was during the recent longest federal shutdown, and I lived as a civil servant through the previous longest federal shutdown under Trump. But the pausing of SNAP benefits, I really got to see firsthand who these policies are affecting, who these political maneuverings are really impacting. On that aspect, it was the seniors. I went to food distributions at VFWs where they were seeing lines as long as since COVID era. They hadn't seen since the COVID era. We were going to churches where people were asking who are our SNAP recipients and giving out, monetary funds and giving them a basket of food and, a box of food so they can hold over. Our veterans, right? We just had our recent veteran suicide here at our local hospital in San Antonio in the parking lot of our veterans hospital, so close. So there's things, I know the VA has been cut drastically, but it all comes down to affordability. The average person is hurting. I don't think we've seen we're just seeing barely the ripple effects of some of these tariffs. We're just seeing the ripple effects that the big, beautiful bill uh, uh, provisions have not even set in. That's going to come in January. So the rise in the healthcare subsidies that are going to expire, that they're going to let expire, people are going to feel these things. It's going to be more expensive for people to live their daily lives. I want to help with that. I really do. I mean, I'm talking to young families that have two kids, one in elementary school and one still a toddler. They want, health daycare is breaking them. They can't afford their car. A lot of families that I know in this neighborhood are one broken car payment away from being behind for months, something that might seem insurmountable to them, and there's one thing, one emergency away from that. So I've lived it. I see my friends and families who are still living it today. I want to be their voice in Washington to say this is not right. Let's bring back some of these safety nets. Let's bring back, maybe not in the exact form that they were. Some of these programs deserve to be updated. Let's update them and let's make sure that they're ready to meet the citizenry and our needs of the next 50 years versus the last 50 years. So it is all about bringing down the ease and the cost of everyday living. And that falls into so many categories: electricity, even wages, how much we are getting paid, increase the living wage, the federal minimum wage. We always seem to get close to that, and it never quite seems to go anywhere. So these are a couple of anything that aggressively tries to control the cost, the rising cost. People don't know if there's an end in sight. They don't know when we're gonna top off. So we need to, if we take back the House, I think there's going to be a breath of fresh air. If Democrats take back the House to say, finally, somebody is willing to stop where this runaway train is going right now.
Now, I think it's important to also ask a little bit about what you think about immigration and the situation that's going on with immigration right now, because it is a national issue. We are getting a lot of reports of ICE raids that are really affecting communities. in a negative way. And I would imagine it's happening in Texas quite a bit too. I haven't seen any of the recent reports, but I'm thinking there's probably a large population there of immigrants that are affected by this. How do you feel Trump is handling this, and would you handle it differently, or how do you feel about the whole situation with what's going on with immigrants right now?
Yeah, I think that it's very racist, and I think it's very aggressive. It's projecting the wrong message for a nation that was founded by immigrants, a nation that was built by immigrants, a nation that continues to thrive by having immigrants in our country as neighbors, as community members, as workers. Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm 100% for having a sustainable, a logical system for immigration. I want H-1 visas to come in. I want immigrant workers to come in. You know, I think that I would rather prefer that choice if there was more applications and more acceptance to come in and work for a season, for a year, seasonally, aspects like that. But you know, the way that it's been approached has just been completely hostile. You know, there's no due process. There's no the color of your skin is probable cause. If you are a brown person, they can pull you over, pull you out of your car, and ask you if you're legally in this country. I heard that they're not even accepting basic IDs anymore. You have to carry around your passport. Who carries around their passport?
I might
Average
start.
American who was born here,
Yeah.
fourth generation Americans and old. I mean, who carries around a passport? So I think it's way out of hand. I think the fact that ICE is masked. I've worked in the federal government for over 10 years. There was never an institute besides COVID and to help not spread a disease where I was asked to be masked because no shame. There should be no shame if you're doing the people's work on behalf of the federal government. So this is a complete projection that is all being perpetrated by our federal government. I think it needs to be reined in. I think that you know, these people, we need to know who's working as ICE agents, what background check do they go through, what training, what ethics training do they go to. Let's put standards on them on when they can use force, what type of force they can use. I mean, this is again a complete abuse. They have no rules. They don't abide by local law enforcement rules. They're not abiding by FBI rules. So, which rules, which standards are being upheld here? So I just would want to be, you know, put me on the oversight committee. I would love to ask these questions to the Secretary of Homeland Security. I would love to ask these questions to the administrator of ICE, you know, the director of ICE, Border and Customs Enforcement. We cannot be cruel to these folks. You know, our laws provide that they're able to come here and seek asylum. Change the laws, but they know it's because they know our laws better than most Americans do. Doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make them criminals. So,
Okay.
you know, the fact that immigration has been halted almost only in specific countries where there are people of color coming from, mostly only South Africans, white South Africans can come in here, completely racist, sending the wrong message. I want to do something to fix that.
You know, Texas, like Arizona, has had a GOP dominated state legislature, right? And that's had resulted in some policies like we had racial profiling of immigrants and brown people before this all came about from Trump with a Maricopa County sheriff named Joe Arpaio. But it does seem like a lot of policy that might negatively impact the Latino community comes at that state level from those state legislators. How, as a congressman, do you feel a little bit handcuffed in your effectiveness? If you were a congressman, would you feel handcuffed a little bit by what comes out of the state legislature to the things you'd like to have done for your district?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you know, yeah, I mean, I think I would work with the state representatives to try to combat some of that, especially the Democratic delegation in the state house, to see where we can do some potential companion bills, you know, at the national level. You know, maybe we can come in, you know, in different ways, you know, with funding or with resources where the state is holding back. You know, the state of Texas likes to invest heavily in border enforcement. And what does it tell you if they're still complaining that it's broken when the state of Texas itself has invested billions and billions and billions of dollars? So, I mean, if there was a solution, then we would have come up with it a long time ago. But being harsh and being cruel and being inhumane and unethical is not the way to do it, uncivil to other human beings. So there's always ways that we make sure that laws, national laws, are being protected, not being violated. When there's not an undue force needed, when people are coming in and surrendering themselves. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm willing to work with Texas Republicans in the state house. I want to make a safer Texas for people on a public safety side. I want commerce to flow freely. In the name of economic development. I want people to come shop here. I want Americans to be able to go shop in Mexico. I want truckloads of goods to travel back and forth. So there's areas of opportunity. I want to work with Texas Republicans on building rural development. These are rural counties. How are we helping build their infrastructure? Maybe we can use those as bargaining chips, and find a common place at the table to say, how can we care for our farmers? This district has farmers in it. How can we give farmers what they need and not put them on some welfare, Donald Trump farm welfare, right? They don't want to be welfare recipients. They want to sell their goods on a national market, and Donald Trump has prohibited that. So I think there's plenty of opportunities where, can start away from immigration and then tangentially build the relationships that we're going to need to tackle those things. And, I would still love to have a voice and influence with anybody, Democrat or Republican. I'm never afraid to have a conversation.
Now, it's it's no secret that Texas has the second largest population of U.S. Latinos in the country. It's a bellwether state, and when you're just looking at Latino USA, how Texas Latinos are feeling and being treated and their quality of life has a big impact on how we're doing as a nationwide community of Latinos. So how would you rate how Latinos are faring in your state right now in terms of their quality of life, their economic well-being, their educational well-being, and all the other factors that go into living a good life?
Yeah, I think Democrat or Republican, Mexican American here in Texas, the average, Hispanic, Latino in Texas, mostly Mexican Americans, are struggling equally and the same. Whether they're promoting Trump and his policies or whether they're taking a stand every day, each one of us has to go pay $7 for cereal, $10 for a gallon of coffee, something to that extent. So we're all feeling it. Nobody in Texas is feeling like we're necessarily winning. We're taking steps backwards. We just witnessed our legislature redistrict maps to get a political edge on, a partisan edge over this. So I don't think that we're all feel like we're winning. I do feel, and we've read this in polls, that, that support that always comes up is a surge of it when Donald Trump is on the map and he is able to turn out key segments of Latino males here in Texas. No lie, it's undeniable. But his ability and Republicans' ability to retain them shows the disconnect. When they say Latinos don't vote here in Texas, say Texas is not a red or a blue state, it's a non-voting state. Republicans haven't cracked that code either. So we're still trying to figure out the right messaging to get the average Latino, Hispanic, Mexican American to stay a voter. But we do know this, that Latino and that Trump support here in Texas has melted, has waned a little bit. And, we expect it to. Look what they're seeing every day. And it's more than the ICE raids, although I know for a fact those are having an impact on our tias, on our abuelas, on our tios, our primos, who are seeing people exactly like themselves or people they work with or people they might know, seeing them in those videos, and not specifically that they know them, but they know people just like them in their community. They would hate for that to happen to them, but it's also the prices,
Mm-hmm.
Tejanos, Texas, we like driving trucks too. And when the gas gets too expensive for your truck that you need for the ranch, that's going to hurt, so the electricity is going. So we're all feeling the pain. I think there's an opportunity. We always say this every year in Texas, but to really turn out the Latinos, because I feel as a community, I don't know if we've ever felt as attacked and as such aggression as we feel towards us now. And I hope that does inspire some Hispanics and Mexicanos, some Tejanos here in Texas to really look deep into this and see how they feel when they see people of our color being probable cause to be asked if they belong in this country.
Wow. Yeah. That's got to be heartbreaking. But it's happening in so many places. We're trying to get people to interview from Illinois, where they're having a crisis there with ICE raids and other places. But Yeah, Texas is an important state in the well-being of the Latinos. Now, you mentioned before that you were in the military with our Senator Ruben Gallegos, our Arizona Senator Ruben Gallegos. Tell us a little bit more about that. I was surprised to hear that, and I think other people might be surprised. Tell us about if you have anything to say about if you served together, any relationships that you guys might have.
Yeah, well, I tell you, got sent to Iraq during the height of the insurgency in 2005, and we were all reservists. So essentially they did is they took an infantry battalion, and they kind of brought in units from all across the country. My unit came in from San Antonio, and Ruben's actually came in from New Mexico at the time, from Albuquerque, but he was in an infantry unit. I was more in headquarters. I was an intelligence analyst. So our paths didn't cross too much while we were actually out there in theater. But once we got back, we experienced a hard time out there. We were the first Marine unit since Vietnam to need combat replacements. We were really in the height of it. We took some heavy casualties, and I didn't. We actually reconnect till some of the memorials that happened after that. So our first time we connected was actually at Arlington Cemetery in D.C. I think it was during his first term as a congressman, as a member of Congress at that point.
Oh, wow.
And we connected, and he's always been a great friend since then. He's made sure that I have his number. When I decided to run the first time, he was one of my first endorsers. He said, "I want to help you out." He says, "Lira, you only get few opportunities in life to do cool shit. This is one of those opportunities, so I have your back." And I'm glad that listen, Ruben had to run an R+10 race as well. I mean, how does a state go for Trump and then go for Gallego? That's very
Right.
impressive. But, I look to him as a mentor, and my campaign looks to him as a mentor as well, because he did it. He was showing up where the Latinos were. He was talking the way, not by talking about sounding like paid actors. He was talking to them in their language, showing up at their events, and listening, more than anything, listening and reflecting that. So this is exactly the methodology that we're trying to use over here, is just to show up and be human, be present, and listen to them. We all know people who are struggling, and we all know people who are thriving. We want to replicate more families thriving, and we want to reduce the amount of people suffering. But he's been he's one of the few elected members where I text or call. He's given me a call back, so I really respect
Okay.
him for that. I give him a huge salute for that, and he's doing a great job.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna need to wind this down, but I did want to mention I did read that Colin Allred decided to withdraw from the Senate race, and he's going to run for one of these redrawn districts, creating all kinds like a merry-go-round. It sounds like over there, people are making decisions on the fly on what they're going to run for and what they're going to file for. How do you feel about that, in particular, Jasmine Crockett maybe running for Senate along with Mr. Tallarico, I believe? Uh, what about this merry-go-round that this redistricting has created?
In Texas, they call that the December surprise, right? Because our filing period is in December. Yeah, this is the last day. You never know what kind of craziness happens out of a day like this. But Colin already ran a fantastic race last time for Senate. He turned out more Democratic voters in the state of Texas in the last 30 years since probably Ann Richards was on the ballot.
Oh,
He did a
wow.
fantastic job. But Tallarico also, he has brings different aspects to it. He goes and talks like he sounds like a preacher when he talks in on the trail. So I think either way, if Jasmine Crockett, which I'm sure she's probably making her announcement right now and we're missing it, but if she does enter the Senate race, I like who the top of the ticket could be for us. You know what I mean? The top of the ticket is going to have to inspire everybody and voters all the way down, and we need somebody very strong to do that. And I think that either Jasmine or James Tallarico have the power, have the influence, have the gusto to do it. I mean, this is a lot of counties in the state of Texas, and they have to go to everyone and plead their case and make their point. So I'm ready for it. I think John Cornyn and Paxton, that's going to be a race to the bottom for those guys. So a Democrat could actually stand up and have a chance in Texas. And I know has become cliche for
It's
us
been a
to
long
say over
time
here,
since
but
they've
we
won
really believe
statewide,
it.
huh? It's been a long time since one has won statewide, huh?
Hey, we look to Arizona, we look to Georgia. You are breaking the mold in many of these things where you're getting Democrats elected at the state level and such. So Where there's a will, there's a way. In your state, and Arizona has proven that. Georgia has proven that in many aspects. So we will keep the fight up here in Texas. And this, like I said, because we're such a Hispanic-heavy, populated state, and we've never felt like we were under siege like we are right now. Maybe that could be the great awakening that we do need here
the
this year.
spark that sets the fire, huh?
Yes, sir. That's what we're hoping on.
Okay.
But we're getting out there to try to inspire it as well. More than hope, we're getting out there to try to bring it to fruition.
This is great. I really was hoping from this interview we get a sense of what's happening in Texas, and we're really getting that from you. How the people are feeling, how the politicians are feeling, and just know what's going on there, because it is such an important state. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Unless Juan, you have a final question, you don't have to, but just open the door for you in case you want to say something.
I don't have any questions. I think John covered everything very well. And I know he did, John Higuera, because you didn't have a lot of follow-up questions. Because I know you keep going until you get the answer you think you need, that the listeners need to hear.
Yeah.
No, John, thank you for coming on and for informing us on the importance of your race. And I'm happy to be working with you.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. And everybody else, keep your eyes on Texas 35. Of the districts gerrymandered, this is an open seat. It has the narrowest Republican edge. So a Democrat can really go in, the right Democrat can really go in there and kick some butt and reject gerrymandering. So I would just let all the folks know, keep an eye on this one. There's going to be a lot of great races out there. And thank you for showing Texas a little bit of love.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing all that expertise and knowledge. So with that, I'd like to tell our viewers, thank you for watching this episode of ImpactoAZ. If you like this content, remember to hit like and subscribe so we can continue giving you this kind of expertise and knowledge. I'd also like to thank our technical editor, Ron Oyos, for continuing to make sure our audio and video is where it needs to be. And we'll see you again next week with our next show. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.